Welcome back to the road to 2024. Welcome to the midterms. Nope. Iowa Senator and President Pro Tempore of the Senate, Chuck Grassley, has announced that he will be running for re-election in the 2022 Iowa Senate bid. A very popular Republican within the Senate. A very well-known man. He's been President Pro Tempore since 2016. State Senator Nate Bolton has announced his intention to run in the 2022 Iowa governor race. He is the 6th Democrat to announce his intention to run. This race is going to be a very big field, as we have a few months until the primary. New Hampshire Senator Maggie Hassan has announced her intention to run in the 2022 Senate race. A middle-of-the-road candidate. Maggie Hassan has had stagnating approval ratings that have gone up and down since the COVID-19 pandemic. That is still going on to this day. Though her approval rating is not as bad as some other senators, though she will do well as midterms do favor the party opposite of the president. Former Deputy Secretary of State Mark Connolly has announced his intention to run the 2022 New Hampshire gubernatorial race. He is the 4th or 5th Democrat to announce his intention, as many Democrats are hoping to win the seat that a very popular Governor Chris Sununu has won. Democrats have not been very favorable towards Chris Sununu since his endorsement of Donald Trump back in the 2020 election, though his approval has stayed up in the high to mid-50s. California Senator and running mate to Vice President Joe Biden in 2022, Kamala Harris has announced that she will be running for re-election in the 2022 Senate race. Not a very popular Senator Kamala Harris is, as the Vice President Mike Pence has attacked her on many issues, as well as the current president. Though this could if a notable Democrat or Republican announces their intention to run, Kamala Harris could end up being in trouble. Former State Congressman Bob Kraus has announced his intention to run in the 2022 Iowa Senate race. He's the first Democrat to announce his intention to run against Grassley. Former Congressman and 2020 candidate John Delaney has announced his intention to run in the 2022 Maryland governor race. Maryland has not had a Democratic governor since 2015, when Martin O'Malley's second term ended and was term limited. John Delaney is hoping to flip the state back to blue, as we have had 8 years of a very popular Republican governor in Larry Hogan. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey has announced his intention on running the 2022 Senate bid. As we have called a while back, the current Senator Mark Kelly announced his intention to run, and of course, none of the pundits were expecting Ducey to stay lay low or maybe run for president in 2024, but it looks like the current governor, who is very popular, by the way, he's one of the 10 most popular governors currently now, announcing his run in 2022, could flip the seat back to red, as Martha McSally has lost to Mark Kelly in the 2022 race. It's my birthday, and we now have a candidacy announcement. Former U.S. Secretary of the Interior Gail Norton has announced her intention to run in the 2022 Colorado Senate race. She is the first or second Republican to do this. The seat is currently held by Michael Bennet, who was a 2020 candidate in the presidential race. Though he did not do a lot to harm his reputation, Gail Norton will have an upward battle to fight if she wins the nomination. Former First Lady of Iowa, Kristi Vilsack, has announced her intention to run in the 2020 Iowa Senate bid. She is the wife of former Iowa Governor Tom Vilsack, who was a very popular governor within Iowa, and Kristi Vilsack is very popular within her own right. She could make this race a lot more competitive if she were to win the nomination. We now have some polling data out of the 2022 New Hampshire Governor Democratic primaries. We have 3 candidates on the ballot currently, or on the polling. Andrew Valinsky leads the pack at 32% of the vote, Mark Connolly in second with 22% of the vote, and Steve Marchand at 12% of the vote. Andrew Valinsky gains second place, losing by 11 points to Dan Phelps in the primary in 2020. But it looks like he could have a huge boost in 2022, and he could end up winning the primary at the end of the day. Former Congressman and 2020 candidate Beto O'Rourke has announced that he will be running for governor in 2022 in Texas. Beto O'Rourke was, and 4 years ago in the 2018 Texas Senate race, he was going up against Senator Ted Cruz, and he only lost by 2 percentage points. In 2020, he was the favorite to win the Texas primary before he dropped out. And of course, he would tout out that he thinks he would be able to flip Texas. And let's see if he can actually do it in what the many pundits are going to be calling a blue wave year. We now have some polling out of the 2022 Iowa Governor Democratic primary. And first we have Rob Hogg at 20% of the vote, Joe Bolcom at 16% of the vote, Chris Hall at 12% of the vote, Janet Peterson at 11% of the vote, Bob Krause at 10% of the vote, and Nate Bolton at 4% of the vote. Nate Bolton, not a very popular candidate, as he has been ridden with scandals over the past 4 or 5 years. Former Seward Mayor Edgar Blatchford has announced his intention to run the 2022 Alaska gubernatorial primary, Alaska governor race. A very well-known Democrat within Alaska. He could be able to flip the seat blue, as Alaska has had notable times where they have had a Democrat governor or senator in the past. We now have some polling out of the 2022 Colorado Governor Republican primary, as Walker Stapleton is leading with 46% of the vote, Victor Mitchell at 19% of the vote, Brian Watson with 10% of the vote. We now have some 2022 New Hampshire Senate Republican primary polling, as we have Don Bulba currently leading at 48% and Frank Eldeblatt at 36%, unlike 2 years ago where 80-some% of voters didn't know who they were going to vote for. It seems like we now have a pretty stern line that the majority of voters know what Don Bullock is about and are very confident that he could win in the primary and will back him in the general instead of the incumbent. Though it's going to be an uphill battle for Don Bullock, as he lost by 6 to 7 percentage points in 2020. We now have some polling out of the 2022 Arkansas Governor Republican primary, as we have Lieutenant Tim Griffin at 52% of the vote and Leslie Rutledge at 44% of the vote. We now have some polling out of the 2022 Maryland Governor Democrat primary, as we have the two candidates, John Delaney currently leading with 44% of the vote, but Peter Franchot not that far behind with 40% of the vote. Arkansas Senator John Boozman has announced his intention to run for re-election in the 2022 Senate race. Arkansas, very deep red state. John Boozman, we don't think anybody is going to be a major threat to Boozman, so he feels very confident that he would be able to win re-election. Probably not as big as a margin as Tom Cotton did 2 years ago, as there was not a major Democrat challenger in 2020. Executive Counselor Colin Van Oystern has announced his intention to run the 2022 New Hampshire governor race. The fourth Democrat to announce this, Colin Van Oystern was once the nominee for the race before losing to Chris Sununu, and he's wanting to get redemption for this. Billionaire and former 2020 candidate Tom Steyer has announced his intention to run the 2022 California Senate race, stating that Joe Biden had picked a terrible running mate, though he still backed Biden in the general election, but he did not favor the running mate, stating that Harris was too far left on a lot of issues and should not be in the Senate currently. Tom Steyer is looking to unseat Kamala, and this big ad game Tom Steyer did back in 2020, garnering 3% of the vote, and at one time garnering more support than Kamala Harris did. Tom Steyer could be a major threat to Harris's Senate aspirations. We now have the polling out of the 2022 New Hampshire gubernatorial Democrat primaries. We have 4 candidates right now. Andrew Walensky currently polling at 30%. Colin Van Oystern, former nominee. Excuse me. Colin Van Oystern currently polling at 24%, the former nominee. He could be a major threat to Walensky. Mark Connolly at 18% and Steve Marchin at 9%. Businessman Fred Hubbell has announced his intention to run the 2022 Iowa Senate race, the former governor nominee for Democrats back in 2018. Fred Hubbell's very known among Democrats and very conservative Democrats as well. He could be a major threat to Chuck Grassley come 2022 if he were to win the nomination. So first he has to get through Bill Sack. We now have some primary polling out of the 2022 Iowa Senate race. Currently, Christy Vilsack currently leading 56% to 32%. A lot of voters seem very confident with Vilsack over Hubbell, though we have not had the debates yet. Things could change. Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs has announced her intention to run for governor in 2022. Within this secession line, she would be second in line to take Doug Ducey's place. And though it seems like Democrats are hoping to finally get a Democrat governor in there, as Doug Ducey won by a landslide back in 2018. Katie Hobbs could be the best choice for Democrats in 2018, as she has a lot of promise among Arizona Democrats. Former Lieutenant Governor Kathleen Kennedy Townsend has announced her intention to run the 2022 Maryland gubernatorial race. She's the niece of former President John F. Kennedy, and she is the relative of Senator Joe Kennedy III. Right now, she clearly has enough star power to win this primary. With the Kennedy name, she could be a force to be reckoned with. We now have some polling out of the 2022 Maryland Governor Democrat primary, as Kathleen Kennedy Townsend currently leads with 33% of the vote. John Delaney currently polling at 30%, and Peter Frankott polling at 29%. A very close race this is going to be, as the primary is quite a few months away. Anything could change. Former Cranston Mayor Steve Laffey has announced his intention to run the 2022 Colorado Senate race. Steve Laffey, a very unknown mayor in Colorado, but very popular amongst his crowd of Cranston. He could be a force to be reckoned with as a dark horse within the race. Louisiana Senator John Neely Kennedy has announced his intention to run for re-election in 2022. As you may know, Louisiana goes by a jungle primary, meaning everyone it's on the ballot, from Republicans to Democrats to Nazis to Libertarians. Everyone is on the ballot. John Neely Kennedy went to the runoff 6 years ago and won, winning 50+% of the vote. I think 56% of the vote. Though it does seem like he will be winning in the runoff no matter what. It seems like, as we can take a look right now, as there are no other major contenders in the race currently. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has announced his intention to run for re-election in 2022. Currently what pundits have it as Abbott versus O'Rourke, though conservatives feel like Abbott will win by a landslide and Democrats feel like O'Rourke will barely win. So this could be a very interesting race, as Beto O'Rourke not the best in debates, and Greg Abbott very good at debates, though Beto O'Rourke is very good at getting crowds out. We'll just have to see and find out what the fundraising game is. Nevada Governor Steve Sisolak has announced his intention to run for governor in 2022. Steve Sisolak, a very popular governor among both Democrats and Republicans, a very conservative Democrat amongst them. Though not as conservative as governors such as John Bel Edwards and Andy Beshear, though very conservative, however. Wanting to keep the Second Amendment and the Electoral College. Among a bunch of Democrats look at him as the crossroads among obtaining the right-wing independent vote. Former Colorado Senator Cory Gardner has announced that he will be hopping into the 2022 Senate race, losing to John Hickenlooper by 8 to 9 percentage points in 2020. Cory Gardner is hoping to be able to win the nomination in 2022 and get a seat back in the Senate. Florida Senator Marco Rubio has announced his intention to run for re-election in 2022. A lot of people were looking at Rubio, hoping for a 2024 presidential run, though that could still happen, though it looks like he's currently focusing on his Senate seat in 2022. Again, Florida, a seat that Democrats will be targeting, though we do not have that many people announced right now, at least no major contenders that could be able to take Rubio's seat, though we will just have to wait to find out, as their primary is in March. Former Lieutenant Governor Mark Hutchinson has announced his intention to run for Senate in Nevada. The current senator in Nevada, of course, Catherine Cortez Masto, a very popular senator. Mark Hutchinson's going to have to do a lot to try to swing a lot of voters into his column to be able to win. Colorado Senator Michael Bennet has announced his intention to run for re-election in the 2022 Senate race. A middle-of-the-road senator, Michael Bennet did not hurt his reputation like a bunch of other candidates did in 2020, playing it safe for most of his candidacy, which was most likely his downfall. Though with a smaller stage, Michael Bennet could do well, as he won by a safe margin back 6 years ago. Now in 2022, pundits are saying this will be a blue wave year, though a bunch of conservatives are hopeful for the America First wave. Could Michael Bennet sweat in Colorado, or will he be able to win big again? Well guys, I will see you next time for episode 7.